Welcome, and this is day 4 of Sebastian's 1995 Volvo T-5R restoration modification video series. If you haven't seen the previous videos, please click the playlist button and start from the beginning. We appreciate you tuning in. Hope you enjoy it. Kicking off the Tinker Day, ready to get some things done with Sebastian. First thing I'm going to do is get this transmission mounted and back down on this cradle so we can lower this car down, bolt this thing up. Well, I'm gonna do the inside before I bolt it up, but we also got parking brake shoes to get on. But let me get this flywheel and clutch kit on here so I can feel like I accomplished something already. Here it is, folks, an official R single mass flywheel clutch kit going on Sebastian's car. Get you some. The beauty of working at a Volvo shop. Timing belt 252, part number, and sway bar inlay. Brand new, baby. I've shown this before, but if you have your crank pulley off, you see this little nipple right here. That aligns with the groove cut in the sprocket, and then aligns with the oil pump nipple, setting your crank perfect on the timing. So if you have a question where you can't find that little notch or these notches in your crank pulley, you can look up from over top of the timing belt area, and sometimes you can see this behind your pulley, behind your harmonic balancer, and know you're in town. I want to encourage you guys to get a torque wrench, either your tension torque wrench. Those things are like $15. This one I kind of like. It goes from 10 foot-pounds all the way up to 150 foot-pounds. I got it from Amazon, and that thing I think only cost me like $45. It's a 1/2-inch swing on there, so if you do the low stuff, you'll need an adapter. Now, if you buy a cheap torque wrench, I say something under $75, you want to hit a couple of bolts to kind of test it, to make sure it's possibly calibrated right. You just don't want to jump in there and start torquing stuff down. There are 2 torque nightmares that I have. Some guy bought a inexpensive torque wrench several years ago, I'd say probably 10 years ago, from one of your popular tool distributors, and he said he set it correctly, like 18 or 22 foot-pounds to torque in his spark plugs, and he pulled out 2 of his spark plug sockets out of his XC90 before he realized he was over torquing them. And I mean, the spark plug came out with the threaded portion of that head. So in my opinion, he needed to replace the head. I don't know how you can reset those in the head. I didn't even know they could come out, but he didn't understand either how to use the torque gauge, didn't realize he was over torquing them, the torque wrench wasn't working, something, and he pulled the spark plugs and the socket out of the head. Another one, I had a guy pay me to go from Albuquerque all the way up to the Gary, Indiana area, because he was putting in his water pump, and these bolts that you put in the water pump, the new ones, they have thread sealer on them, and he was tightening them down. They got what he thought was tight, but they kept turning, so he assumed and thought that he stripped out the threaded area inside the block of the engine, putting his water pump on. Wasn't using the torque wrench. Paid me to go from Albuquerque up to the Gary, Indiana area. I grabbed my torque wrench, started torquing these screws on, and in just about a turn and a half, 2 turns on every screw, they all torqued down and sealed that water pump up. So it's a good idea to get you a good to decent torque wrench and use it when you're tightening stuff down so that you don't have those extremes of errors. Now, he could have easily had that car towed into some shop, and they would have probably charged him for putting in helicoils or something on that engine when there was really nothing wrong with it. He just needed to break out a torque wrench and go that route. So there you have it. Get yourself a torque wrench. Get you some. Get you some. Timing is on the marks. Get set. We're going to put the crank pulley on and roll this engine over a couple times and then torque the clutch plate on. I already torqued the flywheel on. Last night I remembered that Sebastian had another turbo exhaust flange, so we are going with that one. And this one has that broken stud. This one has all three studs. Sebastian has a new 19T. It has a port broken off there. It has the wastegate actuator nipple bent. And I went to take it off of the exhaust flange because we're going to swap exhaust flanges. And I seen a slight bit of movement in the turbo. I don't know if you can see that, but had a slight bit of movement. Yeah, you can see it. So I took a closer look at it after I disconnected it and showed him. This turbo has a crack in it the whole way around it. See that crooked line all the way? That's a crack in the turbo. As I wiggled it, of course it gets a little worse, but somebody cracked this turbo, probably knew they cracked it, and sold it to him. Look at that. This whole turbo deal is a mystery for me. Again, the wastegate actuator bent, the turbo boost pressure nipple broke off. There's some kind of substance, like silicone substance, on the compressor wheel that you could kind of scrape off with your fingernail. It's now binding in the inlet housing because I've wiggled the back of it a few times, checking out this crack that goes the whole way around here. Also, if you have a Volvo 850, this turbo mounts like this, and that nut right there is in the way of where you want to mount your coolant line. You want to mount your coolant line up here, and this nut has to be flush. So your line mounts up here. It can't be a bolt head in the way like that. Man, this is the nice thing about working at Alex's shop. Alex showed Sebastian how to bead blast parts and then add a rust proofing to them. So this is the new, cleaned up, and improved harmonic balancer. Get you some. We're going to go ahead and mount this and close this side of the engine up. Well, I mean, mount this anyway and move on to another task. We're ordering the turbo so that we can replace that busted one that he was sold. So when you order parts and you get them in, take a close look at them so that you can get a warranty claim on them if necessary, because man, you know, we sit on this stuff sometimes 2-3 years before we get this stuff installed, and then it's busted. There's no recourse for it. So when you get your parts, check it out real close. If you got any questions, just send it back and get that stuff taken care of. Protect your investment. We are trucking along. We got the transmission mounted, and mounting the transmission, we found the guide pin hold on the transmission broke off. It's been broke off some time. That thing is almost as dirty as the rest of the transmission. Anyway, we got this rear mount on and in place. We're putting on some new coolant. We got the anti-sway bar locked down. Now, some people have that performance bar. Now, you have some slack in this bracket here. Just loosen these bolts, slide the bracket all the way toward the back of the car, retighten those bolts. That should make sure you clear your control arm. It's the best you can do on that. But you do want to lubricate these bushings inside and out so that they don't wear out quick and make noise. So we're moving right along. Still trying to solve our turbo issue. Next up, parking brakes. Took the tires off. We're gonna try to get these parking brakes working. Got the rotor off and the pad material fell right off inside the rotor. This is what happens to these things when they get 30 years old. So it's good to just replace the shoes every once in a while. So we're going to replace these shoes and see if the system works. We are wrapping it up. Did a lot of chasing our tail today and cleaning, anodizing, and getting stuff looking good, like that pipe right there. Well, we got the anti-sway bar on, torqued down. We got the transmission mounted, the rear engine mount mounted. That stuff torqued down. We have the timing belt stuff done. We have the parking brake stuff apart, getting ready to go back together. It's being anodized. And unfortunately, that's all I could think of that actually got accomplished here. It's 1:30. We're going to knock off here for today. We're still chasing our tail on that turbo that is busted, and trying to find somebody that can get us a turbo in the next day or two so we can get this car off of this rack. Not good to be sitting on somebody's rack being held hostage for parts. So we're going to do everything we can to get this thing down within the next day or two. We'll pick up here tomorrow. I got to go deliver a part and fix a power steering pump on an 850. And this is where the rust proofing magic happens. Yes, sir. We are rust proofing the parts we bead blast. Look at that bracket from behind the right hand side CV axle, courier bearing bracket. That's what it looks like when it's been bead blasted all the rust off of it and rust proof. Yes, sir. We are making a show car here, folks. And that's the rest of that bracket. If you feel that this information was useful, please like it and share it with your social media friends. You can subscribe to my channel so that you will get notifications of future videos that I post. You can follow me on Twitter, and if you need to contact me directly, please visit my website. And if you have any questions, leave them below, and someone or myself will reply to them. Again, thank you very much for watching.